you doing? I'm Chico Terrell. I star in the movie you're gonna see tonight, The Lords of Flatbush. So you better effing like it, or I'll come get you, every one of you. You hear me? All right, I haven't seen the movie for 40 years, maybe 35 years, but I think it's pretty good. Have fun. See ya. So in 1972, I think, we started The Lords of Flatbush. So this is me in 1972. It's a long time ago. It's been a long life. Good life. Very good life. So that was a film that I got by, back then I was totally unknown, and I could do something called audition in character, which is so much fun to do. I heard they were casting this movie with guys from Brooklyn, and I graduated from Yale, and that was not my background at all. So I got a leather jacket. I went out to Flatbush, that area, and I learned the accent, and I went into the audition and just never dropped out of character. I just pretended to be really who I thought they were looking for, which is a great way to audition. And in the audition was Richard Gere and Susie Blakely. Richard was set to play the part I eventually played. And the audition was an improv. The improv was Susie and Richard were boyfriend-girlfriend. They were mad at each other. They'd had a fight, and I was his best friend, the part that eventually Henry Winkler played. And I was supposed to get them back together in the improv. And I knew Richard from acting classes, and he always does this sullen, quiet, somber thing and doesn't say much. And that was his characterization. And he does it beautifully. He's a wonderful actor, but that was what he was doing. So I kept trying to get them to talk to each other. And Richard didn't say anything, you know. And Susie Blakely is the most beautiful woman on the planet. Still is, but certainly then she was. And I, after a little while, I got bored trying to get him to talk to her. I thought, you're crazy, man. So I started talking to her, and we were having a great time, talking. Richard's sitting sullenly off to the side. This is the audition, right? So the next day they called me up and they said, we fired Gere. And we want you to play the part because we don't want Chico to be somebody that could be moved in on, and you moved in on him. I never dropped out of character the whole time I was shooting. None of us did. It was a very satisfying movie to make. Shooting it was really fun because we were the Lords of Flatbush, the four of us. Stallone, Henry, a guy named Paul Mace. We would just be the Lords the whole time. This was the ultimate low-budget film. So when they were setting up a shot for us, we'd go around the corner, the four of us, in Flatbush, and we were the Lords, that's all. I mean, I remember several times Sly got into fights with people, and we'd pile in there and attack whoever it was. We didn't care why he was fighting. He was our guy. We were the Lords, so we were a gang. I remember once that I was going home after a long day of shooting. The days were very long, 14 hours or so. And I was still dressed in my jeans, my leather jacket. And some guy came, this is like 2 in the morning or something, and some guy came flying through an intersection in a car and almost hit me. Without even thinking, I did something Perry King, would never do, but Chico would do. And so Chico did it. I kind of swung around and kicked his car, kicked a dent in his car with those big boots that we all were wearing. And the car screeched to a stop, and this guy got out, and he was gonna, he was furious. He was gonna come over and beat the crap out of me. But it wasn't Perry King standing there, it was Chico, And I said, excuse my language, I hope you're gonna hear a lot of this in the movie anyway, but I said, come on, motherfucker, come on! He got in the car and he just took off. He didn't want any part of me. And I thought, oh, that was great. Chico, thank you very much. Chico taught me a lot about being tough, actually. Well, this film was set up, first of all, it was directed by 2 people. Very unusual, Marty Davidson and Stephen Verona. Now, Stephen Verona is really, he's a filmmaker, but at the time he was much more a painter than a filmmaker. And I know that he would never have cast a Yale graduate to play him if he'd known that I was a Yale graduate in a million years. And that's another reason I stayed in character. I never let out. It wasn't until we were at least halfway through the film that one day I said to him, because Henry also had gone to Yale, right? And I said, hey, Steve, you realize you cast 2 Yale graduates as your your hoods, do you realize that? And he thought I was just... But it was directed by two separate men, and it worked out very well. It was a very odd situation, but we all really enjoyed it. You would kind of pick the director you wanted to talk to. So Sly worked with Stephen Verona mostly. I worked mostly with Marty Davidson. But it was an odd situation, but it worked very well. So here's something interesting. Watch for this. Nobody ever sees this. We were shooting, and my character has a Harley, and they didn't know that I could ride motorcycles. I always have loved motorcycles. And so one day, a week or more into the shoot, Stephen and Marty come to me and say, by the way, can you ride a motorcycle? And I said, yeah, I can ride a motorcycle. And they said, oh, good. They hadn't thought to ask me about that. So they had this old chopper, this old Harley chopper, and I was supposed to ride around in that. We did a scene with that. And then one day we were going to use it for something the next day, and they left it parked outside of Stephen's apartment in New York City. Needless to say, the next morning it was gone. Of course it was gone. How could they have done that? But they did it. So then they had to rush around and find another motorcycle, and they came up with this big dresser Harley, full bags and all this stuff. I said, you can't do that. One time I show up on a chopper, and the next scene I show up on a dresser, and they said to me, don't worry about it. Nobody will ever notice. And sure enough, they were right. Nobody ever notices. So, watch for that in this movie. You'll see me on with no explanation, two totally different motorcycles. Our camera operator through most of it was a guy who, this is a low-budget film, remember, The Lords of Flatbush. Our camera operator had come right out of shooting pornos. So we used to laugh a lot. We used to say that we have to kind of, he tended to shoot low, below the belt, and that if you wanted to make sure your head was in the shot, you had to sort of crouch down. And the Lords, we pulled a couple all-nighters, which were very disturbing for everybody's family. I mean, show business is brutal on your family life anyway, but at the time I had a little 2-year-old kid at home, and my wife didn't know where I was, and this is before cell phones and stuff. It was hard to communicate, so people had to have a lot of faith. But I remember the last day we shot The Lords, we had to do a whole bunch of work right out in Coney Island, and we ended up working for a total of like 28 hours to get the last, because I had to leave to start rehearsing, what was I doing? A part in Othello in Washington, D.C. at the Delacorte Theater. So I went from playing this Brooklyn Hood, and then, for 28 hours, and then jumped in my car with my wife and little baby and roared off to Washington, and with no sleep, as I remember, immediately had to start rehearsing verse, Shakespeare. I mean, and although it was exhausting, I remember thinking again, how lucky can you get? I mean, if you want to be an actor, that's pretty cool to go from shooting a 50s Brooklyn Hood to playing Cassio and finding ways to say, reputation, reputation, oh, I've lost my reputation. How do you do that? It was really wonderful. When you're playing a part, you don't think of it from the outside. You think of it from the inside. You think the thoughts that real people think in real life. So it's all Chico and what he's thinking in that case of playing him. So I don't think of it as a tough guy, but trying to have a girlfriend or having love scenes. I think of it as, I want Jane. His thinking was pretty simplistic, as I remember. I want her. What is it going to take? What do I have to do? I don't care, Get her on the back of my motorcycle.
Brothers! What we do in life echoes in eternity.
We were all wounded.